I secretly drained my daughter's college fund to save her brother's failing business. And when she needed the money for tuition, I said her education could wait because family was supposed to help each other. Before we go on, make sure to subscribe to the channel and let us know in the comments which city you're watching from. I authorized the transfer, convinced I'd never have to explain it. The money disappeared quietly, but the truth appeared on a shared screen. No one was prepared for what followed. I'm Beatriz, I'm 47 years old. I'm a mother of 2 adult children, and everything exploded during an unexpected family video call that was supposed to last 10 minutes and ended up splitting us in two. I never thought my life would be summed up in a bank transaction and a hung-up call. For years, I told myself I'd done the right thing, that a mother acts when one of her children is on the edge of the abyss. That's what I told myself. That's what calmed me. But there are decisions that make no noise when you make them, and yet they leave an echo that never goes away. I always saw my children as 2 extremes that balanced each other out when they were together. Mateo, the older one, had that energy that filled a room. Ideas that shot out without restraint, projects that excited him today and exhausted him tomorrow, creative, impulsive, intense. Sophia, on the other hand, was the complete opposite. Orderly even in her thoughts. Methodical, one of those people who make lists even for things they can't control. When her father and I started saving for college, Sophia was just a teenager, but she took it as her own commitment. She'd ask how much there was, how much was missing, how interest worked. She dreamed of studying without asking anyone for anything. That fund almost became a symbol between us, a silent promise. I'd look at her and think that with daughters like that the future was secure. Mateo was never interested in that money. He had other plans, other urgencies. When he decided to start his own business, I saw it with that mix of pride and fear that only a mother understands. At first, everything seemed possible. Potential clients, new ideas, that sparkle in his eyes that makes you believe that this time it will work. Then the late-night calls started, the bills, the impatient suppliers, the impossible deadlines. He'd call me exhausted, with a broken voice. He'd tell me he couldn't sleep, that he was about to lose everything. I'd listen and feel my chest tighten. How do you say no to your son when he talks to you like that? How do you accept that maybe he was wrong and now he has to bear it alone? I looked for alternatives, asked for extensions, thought about loans that were never approved until one afternoon. Reviewing accounts, I saw Sophia's balance. It was there, still, untouched as always, and the idea appeared ugly, uncomfortable, but insistent. Just a temporary loan, just a push. I would replace it before she needed it. That's what I told myself. That's what I wanted to believe. It wasn't an impulsive decision, or at least that's how I remember it. I thought about it for days. I slept poorly. I woke up with that strange feeling of being about to cross a line. In the end, I authorized the transfer without notice, without consultation. Convinced that silence was a form of protection, that Sophia didn't have to bear that weight, that when everything was resolved, she would never have to know. For a while it worked. Mateo breathed. The calls became less frequent. I interpreted that relief as a sign, as a kind of moral confirmation. I told myself I was doing what any mother would do, that family supports each other, that money comes and goes. But the relief was fragile. The business wasn't picking up. Every month a new urgency appeared, a new hole. I started to avoid looking at the university account. I knew what I was going to find, and I didn't want to see it. I preferred to live in that comfortable lie where there was still time, where everything could be fixed until it stopped being an abstract idea and became a specific date. Sophia's tuition, the exact moment when the money had to be there. That day the phone rang and I knew, even before answering, that something had changed forever. Sophia called me first with a calmness that I now understand as disbelief. She told me she'd tried to pay the tuition and the system gave her an error. She thought it was something technical. She always thought that first. I, on the other hand, felt my mouth go dry. I told her I would check, that maybe the bank was slow, that she shouldn't worry. I lied with a naturalness that scared me. I hung up and stared at the dining room wall, the one I always wanted to paint and never did. I opened the bank app, even knowing what I was going to see. The balance hadn't changed. There was no error, there was no margin. The money wasn't there because I had moved it and because it hadn't come back. I sat down, I got up, I sat down again. I thought about calling her and telling her the truth all at once, but I couldn't find a way. No sentence sounded less cruel than the last. Sophia called again an hour later. She wasn't calm anymore. She had entered the transaction history. She had seen the transfer. She didn't ask me what had happened. She said my name as if it were an accusation in itself. Beatriz. Just like that, dry. I knew she already knew everything. That night she organized a family video call. She didn't ask for my permission. She informed me. When I saw the link, I felt an anticipated shame, as if my body understood before I did, that that moment was going to mark a before and an after. I thought about not joining. I thought about making an excuse. In the end, I accepted. Not doing so would have been worse. The faces appeared one by one on the screen. Uncles, a cousin, even someone I hadn't seen in years. No one spoke. Sophia was serious. Too serious for her 19 years. She wasn't crying. That's what disarmed me the most when she spoke. She did it slowly, like someone who needs every word to be clear. She said she had trusted me, that she had worked, saved, given up things because she knew that fund existed, that it wasn't just money, that it was her plan, her security. She looked at me intently, waiting for something, an explanation, an apology, maybe a denial that would allow her to think it was all a misunderstanding. I defended myself. I didn't shout, but I didn't apologize either. I said that family supports each other, that her brother was on the verge of hell, that I couldn't stand by idly. I said her education could wait, that there were always alternatives. As I spoke, I saw her expression harden. Every sentence I thought was reasonable seemed to push her further away. Someone tried to intervene, said that maybe everything could be fixed, that talking solves things. Sophia didn't answer. She looked at me one last time, as if taking note of something important, and hung up. The screen went black. No one knew what to say afterwards. One by one they disconnected with clumsy excuses and uncomfortable silences. That same night I wrote to her. I told her I was sorry, that I had acted out of love, that I would fix it. She didn't reply. The next day I wrote to her again. Nothing. The silence began to become thick, almost physical. I'd walk through the house and feel everything sound hollower. I tried to talk to Mateo. I told him what had happened, hoping for, I don't know, support, a word, something. He listened in silence. He said he didn't know it had come from there, that he thought it was a bank loan. He didn't defend me, nor did he blame me. He simply stopped answering after that call, as if the problem, once exposed, was no longer his. Over the following days, I started to justify myself to anyone who would listen, that I did it out of desperation, that any mother would have done the same. But every time I repeated that story, it sounded emptier, more fragile, like a worn-out excuse. Sophia stopped answering messages, blocked my number. I found out from third parties that she was looking for extra jobs, that she had postponed university. Each new piece of information hit me like a confirmation of something I didn't want to accept. I didn't just take her money. I took away the peace of mind of knowing she could trust me. The nights became long. I'd wake up thinking about the transfer, about that click that had changed everything. I started to wonder at what exact moment I had stopped seeing Sophia as someone who also needed to be protected. And that question, once it settled in, never let me sleep the same again. For weeks I lived in a sort of uncomfortable pause. The house kept running, the clock ticked on, the world didn't stop because I had made a bad decision. That was the hardest thing to accept. I'd get up, work, do small errands, water the plants, everything the same. And yet nothing was. I started to go over the story again and again, looking for the exact point where everything went wrong. I told myself it wasn't ill-intentioned, that I didn't mean to cause harm, but that idea clashed with an increasingly obvious truth. I had decided for Sophia without giving her the option to have a say. I had treated her as an available resource, not as a person with the right to choose. Sometimes I'd catch myself thinking that she had always been strong, responsible, that she knew how to manage. That thought, which for years had seemed like a compliment, started to sound different, like an alibi, like an elegant way to justify why it was easier to take from her than to deny Mateo. One afternoon, I looked at old messages, conversations with Sophia, where she told me her plans, her fears, her excitement about starting university. I read them with a strange, almost alien feeling, as if I wasn't the mother who responded with words of pride and support. In those messages was the trust one had broken, intact, unsuspecting. Mateo didn't call again, nor did he write. At first his silence hurt me, then I began to understand it as another consequence of the same decision. I had wanted to save him without asking if he wanted to be saved like that. When everything went wrong, he withdrew. Not to punish me, I think, but because he didn't know what to do with that guilt that also bounced off on him. There were days when I convinced myself that in time Sophia would understand. I clung to that idea like a board in the middle of the water. I told myself she was young, that she was hurt, that the anger would pass, but every week without news eroded that fantasy. The silence didn't seem like a tantrum, it seemed like a decision. I started to notice how some relatives looked at me. They didn't say anything, but there was a new distance, a caution. I kept explaining myself, even when no one asked, as if repeating the story could rewrite it, as if finding the right tone would make it acceptable. On one of those days, I received a short message from Sophia, just one sentence. It said she didn't want to talk, that she needed space, that I shouldn't insist. There were no insults, no reproaches. That disarmed me more than any shout. I replied that I understood, that I would be there when she wanted. Then I left the phone face down and stayed like that for good while looking at my hands, wondering at what point they had gone from caring to hurting. I began to recognize something I had denied from the beginning. I hadn't just wanted to help Mateo, I had also wanted to avoid feeling like a bad mother. Helping him allowed me to maintain that image, to tell myself I was present, that I wasn't abandoning any of them. In that attempt, I had done exactly that with Sophia, only in a quieter way. Mateo's business officially closed a month later. I found out through a casual comment. There were no goodbyes or final explanations. It simply ceased to exist. I sat on the bed with that information and felt a strange emptiness. All that damage for nothing. All that risk for an ending that saved no one. I thought about writing to Sophia to tell her, as if that news could change anything. I didn't. I understood that it was no longer about facts, but about something deeper, about basic trust, about that childish feeling of knowing there's an adult who won't use your effort against you. Sometimes I find myself rehearsing apologies under my breath. Other times I get angry at myself for not having spoken sooner, for having chosen the easy path of silence. The problem is I don't know if there are any words that are enough anymore. I don't know if an explanation can repair a betrayal that was experienced as so personal. I still believe I acted out of love, but now I'm starting to accept that love, when mixed with fear and favoritism, can become unrecognizable. And that idea, once it takes hold, doesn't let you look at your own actions in the same way. The calm in the house isn't peace, it's a tense weight, as if everything is contained, about to break again. Only this time it doesn't depend on me. The definitive break didn't come with a shout or a new argument. It came with absence, with the way time began to pass without bringing anything back. No message, no call, no sign that there was still something to rebuild. I tried one last time to talk to Sophia through a long, measured email, written and rewritten for hours. It wasn't an excuse, or at least that's what I wanted to believe. I told her how I had reached that decision, the fear I felt for her brother, the mistaken certainty that I could fix everything before she noticed. I apologized without embellishment. I told her I understood if she didn't want to reply, but that I needed her to know it hadn't been indifference. The email didn't bounce back, not even as an error. It just stayed there, sent, floating in a void that was already familiar to me. With Mateo, something different happened, but just as definitive. One day he showed up to pick up some boxes he had left at home. He didn't give any notice. He rang the doorbell as if he were a stranger. We looked at each other awkwardly at the door. He didn't talk about the business, he didn't talk about the money. He thanked me in a low voice for having tried and, without looking at me fully, said he needed distance. There was no reproach in his tone, just tiredness. When he left, I felt another door close, this time without a slam. It was then I understood I hadn't saved anyone, that my decision hadn't created a stronger bond, but an impossible debt to settle. Sophia had lost her trust. Mateo had gained a guilt he didn't ask for, and I was left in the middle holding a justification that no longer convinced even me. The extended family stopped insisting. At first they called, suggested mediations, meetings, time. Then the contact became sporadic, polite, distant. I was the uncomfortable topic no one wanted to touch too much. The mother who crossed a line, not out of malice, but for something that is sometimes judged worse, believing she knew more than others about what they needed. I started to notice details I had previously ignored. Sophia's room intact, as if time had stood still there. Her notebooks, her neat notes, the papers where she had calculated expenses and deadlines. All that effort had ended up financing a failure that wasn't even hers. Every time I went in, I felt a pressure in my chest, a mix of guilt and shame that forced me to leave quickly. I tried to sell things to start repaying the money, even though there was no one to return it to. I did it more for personal punishment than for hope. Each object that left was a way of reminding myself that decisions have real, tangible weight, but none of that touched the core of the problem. The money was just the surface. The hardest certainty came one ordinary night without drama. I realized that even if Sophia started talking to me again, even if Mateo got over his failure, something would no longer be the same. I had ceased to be a safe place, and that loss has no easy repair or shortcuts. I had crossed an invisible border, believing that love gave me permission, and now I was on the other side, watching as the damage became permanent, with no possibility of undoing the path. The house was still standing, so was I, but everything that had sustained that idea of family was already broken, and there was no new decision that could reverse it. Now I live with a house in artificial calm. There are no shouts, no arguments, no daily reproaches. There's something worse. A silence that asks for nothing and offers nothing. I walk through the same spaces as always, but they don't quite belong to me anymore. Each corner has a concrete absence, an empty chair, a closed room, a phone that doesn't ring. The money didn't come back, the business doesn't exist, and my children aren't here either, at least not like before. Sometimes I catch myself thinking in practical, almost cold terms. What would have happened if I had said no, if I had spoken sooner? If I had trusted that Mateo could fall without me cushioning the blow using his sister's effort? Those thoughts come late. They don't bring solutions, only useless comparisons. I still believe I acted out of love. I can't deny that without denying myself, but now I understand that that love was twisted by fear, by the need to not feel like a mother who abandons. In that desperate attempt to save one, I chose to silently sacrifice the other, convinced I would never have to explain it. And when the truth came out, there was no way to wrap it up nicely. The bank account over time can be rebuilt. I've already started almost mechanically. Trust is another thing. It doesn't respond to deposits or deadlines. It doesn't come back just because someone needs it. And that's the most uncomfortable lesson of all. No one taught it to me. I learned it late, and at a cost I'm still paying. I don't know if Sophia will ever speak to me again. I don't know if Mateo will find a way to let go of that silent guilt he took with him. There are days when I imagine a future reconciliation, others when I accept that maybe this is the definitive consequence, the way life balances the decisions we make believing we control everything. I wanted to protect them. I wanted to be the one who resolves, the one who cushions, the one who supports, and I ended up losing them both. That's the truth that accompanies me now, without embellishments, without excuses. The rest is just noise. Story 2. I demanded my son share his $200,000 inheritance with his sister after she destroyed his car and begged him to forgive her. Before we go on, make sure to subscribe to the channel and let us know in the comments which city you're watching from. I don't know if I'm wrong. I don't know if I overreacted. I don't know if desperation, maternal instinct blinded me, or if I simply failed as a mother. The only thing I have clear is that that night, at that apparently normal dinner, my family broke and everything started with a phrase that still sounds to me like a gunshot. I'm thinking about buying a car. The three of us were having dinner, me, my daughter Alejandra, and my son Armando. It was Tuesday, roast chicken, and an atmosphere calm enough to relax a bit. Alejandra was talking about her problems finding a job, how difficult everything was, the anxiety that was killing her. I listened to her carefully, Armando, as always, quieter. And that was when he dropped that phrase, so casual, so carefree. I think this year I'll buy a nice car. I have enough without touching any of the fund. Alejandra looked at him as if she hadn't understood. What fund? The investment Dad left, Armando replied, as if he were talking about a minor detail. I never touched the principal, only the interest. And it's quite a lot now. Quite a lot? How much? I asked, trying to make my tone sound neutral, although I felt an uncomfortable twinge in my stomach. I don't know, he said, hesitating. Maybe about 200,000. Alejandra's fork hit the plate. What dollars? Armando said. The silence was instantaneous. The kind of silence that doesn't form out of respect, but out of shock. What do you mean you have $200,000? Alejandra asked, already visibly upset. I don't have it, the investment Dad left has it, he clarified. I left it where it was. Dad had put a lot into technology. It grew quite a bit. I've only used the interest. And why did you only give me $45,000 when I turned 18? She asked, looking at me this time. Because you asked for it. It was your right. You withdrew it all. I replied, a little confused by the intensity of her reaction. Yes, but nobody told me it was going to grow like that. I used it to study, to try something. I thought it was better to use it than to leave it rotting. Nobody forced you to use it, Ale, Armando said. It was your decision because I didn't know. You did know. And now you're rich while I'm here without a penny. I'm not rich. I just took care of what they left me. Then lend me some.
Help me even if it's just with something.
A push, a loan, whatever. I'm not going to do it, he said. Just like that, bluntly, I intervened, feeling a tension accumulating that threatened to overflow the table. Son, could you help her a little? Not everything, but something fair. He looked at me in disbelief. You too. It's not about turning against you. I said, she's your sister. She has nothing. She's here living with us trying to rebuild herself. And all of that is my fault. No, he replied. Why did I do things right?
We aren't talking about blame.
We're talking about family, and since when is family only measured by how much I give? Alejandra got up. She was crying. I can't believe you prefer to see us doing badly, knowing you can help us. What kind of person are you? Armando also got up. He was no longer the usual quiet boy. He had his jaw clenched, his eyes burning. What kind of person am I? I'm the one who didn't ask for anything, the one who didn't spend his share, the one who didn't cry every time something didn't go as expected, the one who learned to keep quiet. You are selfish, she yelled. And you are irresponsible, he returned with a broken voice. Who ruined everything and now wants someone else to fix her life. I tried to intervene again, but it was too late. I'm not going to give her anything, he said. Because it's not just money, it's my future, my plans, the only thing I've done right, and I don't intend to risk it for someone who didn't know how to wait. And he left. Alejandra collapsed in the chair, crying inconsolably, and I stayed there between two completely broken children, not knowing if what had just happened was another family disagreement or the beginning of the end. And, with that comment, I knew there was no turning back. That was how the dinner ended. Behind, like a bitter memory that we all tried to ignore, but that kept beating in every corner of the house. The following days were awkward. Alejandra barely left her room. Armando didn't answer a single one of my messages until after a week I called him. I asked him to come, not to fight, to talk. He arrived on a Saturday afternoon, punctual, dressed as always, sober, precise. He brought no grudge on his face, but no affection either. What do you want to talk about? He asked me as soon as he sat in the living room. I want you to explain your point of view, to tell me about your plans, how you plan to use that money. He sighed as if he already knew where the conversation was heading. Mom, I've been building this for years. Years. It's not just money. It's the only guarantee that someday I'll be able to stop living day to day. That I'll be able to open a business, buy a house, have something of my own, something that doesn't depend on anyone else. I nodded. I understood. Of course I understood. But there was also Alejandra locked up with accumulated bills and a fear that was devouring her. I know, I told him. But your sister is doing badly, Armando. Very badly. I don't know if you see it, but there are days when she doesn't even shower. She doesn't sleep. She doesn't eat. She's broken. And I was doing badly too. He interrupted me. Do you remember when Dad died? Who stayed with you without saying a word? Who worked so as not to ask you for a single penny more? Who saved every coin while you two supported each other? It hurt me, because it was true. I'm not saying you haven't done the right thing. I try to soften. I just think that if you have the means you could help her start over, to look for something more stable, to get out of the hole. And who helps me, Mom? His voice was no longer hard, it was tired. Who gives me something if I fail? You aren't going to fail. You don't know that. Nobody knows. That's why I take care of what I have, because I know what it is to have nothing, because I was there. Because I learned to live with little, and now that I have something, they want to take it away from me. It's not taking it away from you, I told him. It's sharing. There was a long silence. Uncomfortable. It's always like this with you, he finally said. You're always trying to make up for what Alejandra lacks. You always defend her. I never asked you for anything. And now that I finally have something, you want to part for her too. That hurt me. I'm not asking for it for myself. She's your sister, and I am also your child. I didn't know what to answer. Do you have any idea how that feels? He continued. Knowing that no matter what I do, I'll always be second, that if she makes a mistake there are excuses, but if I take care of myself, I'm selfish. I stayed quiet. I don't want to be the bad guy in the story, Mom. But I can't sacrifice what I built again just to save someone who doesn't know how to support herself. And what are you going to do then? Let her sink. She chose her path. I chose mine, and for once in my life I want to think about myself. The phrase hit me harder than I expected because it was honest, raw, and because although it was hard for me to accept, he was right. Armando stood up. I don't want you to hate me for this, but I also have a life. And I'm tired of living in the shadow of her mistakes.
He left.
I was left alone in the living room with that phrase spinning like a sentence. I also have a life. And for the first time I wondered if I had failed to protect both of them. 2 children, 2 paths, 2 versions of what family means. And me in the middle trying to hold a rope that was fraying more with each passing day. After Armando left, Alejandra entered the living room. Her eyes were swollen, but she was no longer crying. She had the look of someone who was stopping hoping. Did he tell you no? She asked. Yes, I replied. She nodded as if it were what she already knew. She sat in front of me. Do you know what the worst part is, Mom? That he makes me feel like a thief, as if I were asking for something that doesn't belong to me. That's not the case. Right? Because he made it look like I want to take his future away. As if it wasn't the same future that Dad left for both of us. I didn't know what to say. And then it started first with an aunt, then with a cousin, then with her grandmother. Alejandra began to talk, to tell her version, to vent her frustration out loud, and what was an internal, family, painful dispute became a public trial. I received calls, indirect messages. How is it possible that Armando doesn't want to help her? Isn't that what Dad would have wanted? And you aren't going to do anything. But the worst was my brother-in-law's birthday, a large family gathering, the kind where nobody is missing. I arrived with Alejandra. He arrived on his own. Nobody greeted each other. Everyone knew. Everyone had their own opinion, although nobody said it directly until they couldn't take it anymore. Armando was on the patio alone. I watched him from afar. And then one of his cousins approached, then another, then an aunt. They surrounded him, questioned him. Is it true you have more than 200,000 saved? Why don't you help your sister? She has nothing. Armando, aren't you ashamed? Dad always said that money was to unite, not to divide. I didn't get there in time. When I entered the patio, the argument was already heated. I don't have to give explanations, Armando yelled. Of course you do, his cousin told him. Because this isn't just yours. Your dad left it for both of you, and Alejandra spent it, he replied. Or nobody remembers that anymore. Nobody is going to say it was her decision to take it out early, that she used it for a degree she never finished. But you have everything now. Could you help her? Family comes first. Family, the same one that crucifies me for saving, the same one that calls me selfish for not giving away what cost me to take care of. He turned around, saw me. I was standing there without being able to do anything. And then he said it. You know what? Keep your drama. With your speech that family shouldn't have secrets. Because the only secret here is that all of you expected me to be the savior just because you don't like seeing Alejandra fall. And he left. Alejandra watched him leave and didn't say anything. There was no need. Her face was pure venom. That night at home, she told me something that still makes my hair stand on end. If he doesn't want to help me, then let him get ready. Because I'm not going to sit idly by. I thought she was talking about a fight, a stronger argument, a confrontation. I never imagined what would come next. And that was the last night that somehow I still believed this could be fixed. That word stopped making sense after what happened, because what Alejandra did wasn't a yell, nor a tantrum, nor a frustrated sister's fit. It was a direct, irreparable blow. It all happened fast, so fast that I still have a hard time understanding how we got to that point. After that family gathering, Armando stopped coming home. He didn't write, he didn't call, and when I asked him by message if he could come see us, he only replied, "I don't think it's a good idea." Alejandra was quieter than ever, but it wasn't sadness. It was something else, something colder, more calculated. One night, I found her sitting in the living room alone, staring into space. I asked her if she was okay. "Yes," she replied. "Just thinking." I didn't want to inquire further, but I should have. 2 days later, Armando appeared at home. Not to stay, but because he had received something that left him furious. "Did you know?" He yelled, entering through the door like a storm. "Know what?" "That someone destroyed my car." My blood ran cold.
What? How?
"Are you okay?" The car was parked in front of my apartment. This morning I found it with shattered windows, scratched, and with a note on the windshield that said, "You brought it upon yourself." I didn't know what to say. I looked at him confused, horrified. "Do you think it was Alejandra?" I asked in a low voice. "I don't think so." "I know so. Because the car has a camera, Mom. And I already saw the video." That was when he approached Alejandra from his room. With a coldness I didn't know he had, she told him, "You can't prove anything." "Seriously," Armando replied. "It's recorded. It's you breaking the windows with a crowbar yelling." She didn't flinch. "Then sue me." And he did. I couldn't believe it. My son suing his sister. My daughter denying everything as if it didn't matter. As if destroying a car was a simple emotional complaint. "How could you do that to your brother?" I yelled at her. "And what has he done to me?" She answered for the first time, raising her voice. "He left me stranded. He left both of us. He has the power to change everything, and he does nothing. Nothing. That doesn't justify the violence." She didn't answer me, with burning eyes. Well, it seems justice only exists when he needs it. The lawsuit took its course. Alejandra had no choice. The evidence was irrefutable. The trial was short, precise, hard. She had to pay $10,000 in damages. And then came the final explosion. The day Armando came to pick up some boxes he had stored, I confronted him. Not calmly. No, with diplomacy, with my pain on the surface. "Are you really going to take this to the end?" I told him. "Don't you see your sister is on the verge of collapse? And what about me?" He answered, "I don't matter. Everything she does is allowed. I have to put up with everything just because she cries louder. She's your sister. Your blood. Family doesn't sue family, and family destroys cars. Threatens.
Lies.
Enough is enough." I yelled. "If you aren't going to help her, if you aren't going to forgive this, then get out." He looked at me with a mixture of anger and sadness. "Are you kicking me out of my house? If you can't act like part of this family, then yes." Silence, pain. And then his last phrase.
Fine.
I was going to leave anyway, because I already understood that here I'm only useful. If I give in, if I keep quiet, if I break myself for you guys. And he left. That was the moment I knew there was no going back. That was the moment I lost him. Not because of an accident, not because of a tragedy. I lost him because I chose a daughter who was falling apart. And in that instant, no matter how much it hurt, I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I could still save one of the two parts that were left. I never imagined that that too was going to break. That's how it all ended. Not with a reconciliation, not with forgiveness, with a dry crack that nobody heard, but that I felt in the exact center of my chest. Alejandra paid the $10,000 every penny, not because she wanted to, but because she had no other way out. I tried to talk to Armando again. One last time I asked him to meet me at the park where we used to go when they were kids. He arrived on time. He always was. "What did you want to talk to me about?" he asked seriously, coldly. "I want to understand you," I said. "I want us to talk without fighting." He nodded. He looked at me as if it cost him not to hate me.
I'm listening.
"I know you're hurt," I started. "That you feel nobody has defended you, that you've been the only one who always carried everything in silence. And you might be right, but she's your sister, and I am your son. And don't you think Alejandra deserves another chance? She's on the edge, Armando. She has nothing left. She has no savings, no credit, no mental health, nothing, and that's why I have to give her mine. That's what you expect. I expect you to be human, to look past the grudge. Grudge." He almost laughed. "I don't have a grudge. I have a memory and common sense." "Then, lend her something, even if it's just a part. It won't ruin your life." "And if it does," he said directly. "And if it does, what if that part is exactly what I needed to buy my house? Or open my business? Family comes first." That phrase, so trite, so overused. And yet, I dropped it like a knife. Armando looked down. His eyes held no anger, only disappointment. "I can't do this.
Mom.
I don't want to be part of this dynamic where everything is forgiven, everything is justified, except my things." "Then, aren't you going to help her?" "No." The silence became eternal. I broke it with what I shouldn't have said, but I said it. "Then, don't come back. I don't want to have someone in my life who sees his sister fall and does nothing." He looked at me in disbelief and answered with something I'll never be able to erase. "You are kicking me out, do you understand? I'm not the one leaving. You are the one pushing me out for not giving in to your emotional blackmail." "It's not blackmail," I yelled. "Of course it is. You and Alejandra have turned my responsibility into a moral debt that I never signed. What I have is mine, because I took care of it."
And you, Mom, you know that.
"And then what? Are you going to leave us in ruins while you live peacefully?" "I'm not going to carry the guilt of your bad decisions. She's your sister, and I am the son you turned her back on." There he left, and this time he didn't come back. There were no more calls. There were no messages. He blocked me, his sister, his uncles, everyone. Alejandra entered a kind of lethargy. She slept late.
She ate little.
She lost weight. She lost her shine. She became almost a ghost at home. And I started questioning everything. Every word, every decision, every moment when I demanded something more from him. But I also kept repeating to myself, I did it for Alejandra. I did it because she needed it more, and yet I couldn't ignore what weighed more. I turned my back on my son, not because I wanted to, but because I felt I had no other choice. That was what I felt I never had, that everything I did out of necessity, out of instinct, out of love, and yet I lost my son maybe forever. Weeks passed since that last conversation, and the silence became heavier than any fight. Alejandra barely speaks. The lawsuit, the debt, the shame, consumed her from the inside out. I try to hold her up, but it's like carrying a body without a soul. I don't know if she's depressed, exhausted, or simply defeated. Sometimes I hear her cry in the shower. Other times I see her look at the door as if waiting for him to enter, but he doesn't enter. Armando disappeared. He closed his social media accounts. He changed his number. He left the apartment where he lived. Nobody knows where he is. Nobody has seen him again. And I repeat it to myself every night. I did what a mother had to do. I protected the one who needed it most. I helped the one who was broken. I defended the daughter, who had no one else. But what about him? Who protected Armando? Who hugged him when he felt he was always alone? Who told him he also had the right to be a priority? Nobody. Not even me. And although I justify it to myself, although I repeat over and over again that money cannot be worth more than a life, the truth is that there are also lives that break when you feel nobody sees you. And I think that was what happened to him. I don't know if he'll return. I don't know if someday he'll knock on my door. I don't know if I'll ever be able to look him in the eyes without seeing reproach. Alejandro is here, but she's empty and I am alone with this house full of memories, with an empty room I don't want to open, with one more plate that is no longer used, with a son I no longer know if he calls me mom. Many have told me I was unfair, others that I was brave. Some believe Armando was cruel, others defend him as if he were a hero. But everyone sees it from the outside. Nobody carries what I carry because in the end it doesn't matter how much I try to justify it. It doesn't matter how much I say I did it out of love, for family, out of necessity. I lost him. I lost my son, maybe forever.